Okay, I'm back. So picking up where I left off about Chernobyl, okay? Like I said, besides the science and experts, okay, so we know that back in 1986, what type of government the Soviet Union had, they, were very much authoritarian from top all the way down, okay? And that nuclear power facility, Chernobyl, no, it was not owned by a private company. It was a government owned, and all of the workers worked for the government, basically. And like I said, they tried their best from the top to the bottom to control the narrative. But I think their efforts we all know that their efforts to control the narrative, how it basically hurt the people who lived in that city where that plant was, and for thousands of miles surrounding it. Okay, but that idea of controlling the narrative and everyone must obey and deliver the same talking points, that we all see that's not just with these authoritarian type of governments. Okay, and if we think about it, if you're listening in another country, in these so-called countries that are supposed to be republics and democracies, I live in the United States, and whether it's regardless of the political party, we see it's the same type of ideology of controlling the narrative, delivering the same talking points that exists when it comes to certain things, to certain events. Okay. And this fear that exists among people who see and know that when things aren't right, that there's danger afoot, that truth must be told, but those people are too afraid to tell the truth. Whether it's, like I said, an authoritarian type of government or within a democracy. Okay? Now, moving on from just government officials, let's think about like our workplaces. Okay? The workplace. Well, and those of you who listen to some of my earlier recordings, like what's happening or what was happening in South Carolina, and the fight still continues for those teachers in South Carolina. And South Carolina is one of those right to work states, which basically it's a union busting thing to keep the unions, strong unions that exist in other parts of the United States out of South Carolina. Okay, and we could go back to slavery, Reconstruction, students of history, you can go back to that stuff and read between the lines and see for yourself as to why this union busting thing is very strong throughout the South. But anyways, with those teachers, and how impressive that was to see so many of those teachers out there marching. Okay. But we all know that even though majority of those teachers, work for public schools, we know that they were afraid. They were afraid to go out there and march. They are afraid to speak up because what? Even though this is a so-called democracy, there is still that element within these workplaces of towing the line, keeping your mouth shut. You take what we give you, and how dare you speak out. Okay. And Legasov, even though within the series, if you go back and you watch it for yourself, and I'm going to watch it again, that there were times that he seemed to be torn between doing what the government says to him and doing what his scientists that were working under him were telling him to do based on the evidence that was in front of his face and what's best for the people. Okay. And Luckily, in the end, even though it cost him his career and ultimately he took his own life, he told the truth. And let me just get personal. I know what it's like to be blackballed. I know what it's like to be blackballed in the workplace. I know what it's like to be blackballed. And when I tell you, it is a horrible feeling. It is a horrible feeling to be blackballed, not because you broke a law, not because you did something unethical, but to be blackballed because you spoke out against something that was being done that was unethical, something being done that was unlawful. Because even though South Carolina is a right to work state, remember, if you go back to the civil rights movement and discrimination, there are still state and federal equal employment laws that all workplaces must obey. Okay? And so, being blackballed is not fun. It's not right. It is very, very painful. And it can cause all kinds of depression. Okay, I know that statement about all kinds of depression might not make sense. But it's not a good feeling at all. All right? So, I think I might be talking a little too much. It's going on a little too long, but I just did not want to do an episode by episode review of Chernobyl. But I do encourage you all to watch it, especially those of you who love science, but also those of you who love and are intrigued by the interaction of governments, whether it's authoritarian or so-called democracies, the interaction between governments and its people, okay, and how those different types of governments, how they tend to, in some way, shape, or another, shut people up, how they have all types of power, and how they're capable of shutting people up, preventing people from speaking out and telling the truth by threatening their livelihoods, okay? Or threatening to take away their livelihoods. And I know I went off on a tangent a little bit about the teacher protests in South Carolina, but hey, I think this stuff, it's a good series. Watch it. It makes you think. It really does make you think. The man, he was blackballed because he spoke out. He told the truth, rightfully so. Like I said, I know what it's like to be blackballed for telling the truth in the workplace and speaking out, speaking out against being abused in the workplace. And look at the type of country we live in. This is supposed to be a democracy, but because of decades and decades of people being allowed to abuse their power, this notion of being allowed to abuse your power and get away with it, whether it's in the federal level, state level, these big corporations, private industries, private businesses, public schools, private schools, any type of workplace, there are always those people within these workplaces who feel as if, because I'm up here, my family, my friends are up here within this industry, we can abuse those of you underneath us. And if you speak out, we might not kill you, but we can do things to you to make you feel like you want to be dead. Okay? So, and look, especially in these workplaces where that are pretty much funded by tax dollars. and are supposed to be looking out for the interests of the public. We got to speak up. We can't let stuff like that continue. All right. And if you are being bullied or blackballed, intimidated, abused in any way, shape, or form, or if you see any stuff like that happening in your workplace, you do need to go online. It's free to look up laws in your state in terms of what workers in certain workplaces can do, your rights, okay? Because you do have rights, especially if you live in those states that have powerful unions, okay? And if you don't live in one of those places, you can get a lawyer if you can, but also consult the EEOC. You don't have to pay for a lawyer. You're being discriminated against, intimidated, harassed, bullied, even physically threatened. The EEOC, they'll have your back and they will sue for you, okay? They will sue your workplace for you. The EEOC, if you have a legitimate case, they will handle that for you. But you need to look it up. Make sure the deadline hasn't passed. Have your documentation ready. And be prepared. Put on the armor of God for a fight. I'm sorry for talking so much. Look, watch Chernobyl. If you don't have HBO, you can find it online on one of these bootleg websites. I'm not promoting that, but I'm just saying you should watch it. If you have any children who are of a certain age that you feel could handle it and handle the conversations that go along with it, go ahead, watch it with them. Talk to them about it. Because like I said, there are many lessons that could be picked up from this true story. But don't forget to remind them that because it is a TV show, there might have been some exaggerations, like the character that Emily Watson played wasn't based on one true person. She was basically created to represent all of the scientists that worked with Legasov and helped advise him on what to do. Okay, thank you all. If you struggled through these two parts listening to me, I thank you so much. Again, that's Chernobyl. Watch it. It's only 5 episodes. Y'all take care. Talk to you later real soon. Peace out.